Bonjour! Welcome to Rambo Loves History. I am your favorite French bulldog that takes you through mind-blowing history with style. Welcome back to Rambo Loves History. Picture this. In 1854, a foreign naval commander sailed into Japanese waters with black warships, aimed his cannons at a sovereign nation, and essentially declared, "Trade with us, or we'll blow you to pieces." Within 14 years, that same nation would overthrow a government that had ruled for over 2.5 centuries. Within 40 years, they'd defeat a European empire in war. Within 90 years, they'd challenge the entire Western world order. How did a nation go from complete isolation to global superpower in less than a human lifetime? As a French bulldog, I appreciate dramatic transformations, but this one takes the biscuit. When Commodore Matthew Perry's black ships appeared in Edo Bay in 1853, Japan had been closed to the outside world for over 200 years. The Tokugawa shogunate had created perhaps history's most successful isolationist state. No Japanese could leave the country on pain of death. No foreigners could enter save for a handful of Dutch traders confined to a tiny artificial island in Nagasaki harbor. Christianity was banned. Foreign books were prohibited. Japan had deliberately frozen itself in time while the rest of the world underwent the Industrial Revolution. The stakes could not have been higher. Japan's leaders watched in horror as China, the Middle Kingdom, the eternal center of Asian civilization, was being carved up by Western powers like a Christmas goose. The Opium Wars had shown what happened to Asian nations that couldn't match Western firepower. India had been swallowed whole by the British East India Company. The question wasn't whether Japan could maintain its splendid isolation. The question was whether Japan would even survive as an independent nation. The Tokugawa system had worked remarkably well for over 2 centuries. Society was rigidly divided into 4 classes: samurai, farmers, artisans, and merchants. Movement between classes was forbidden. Every aspect of life was regulated, from the clothes people could wear to the size of their houses. The Edo period saw a flowering of Japanese culture. Kabuki theater entertained the masses. Woodblock prints by artists like Hokusai and Hiroshige captured scenes of daily life with extraordinary beauty. Cities like Edo, modern Tokyo, became among the largest in the world. But by the 1850s, cracks were showing. Natural disasters had weakened the shogunate's authority. The rigid social system was breaking down, and most ominously, Western powers were expanding aggressively across Asia. Now here's where it gets interesting. When Perry arrived with his squadron of steam-powered warships, the Japanese were not the simple, naive islanders that Western accounts often portrayed. They knew exactly what those black ships represented. They'd been receiving reports through their Dutch connection about Western expansion, about the Opium Wars, about the fate of once mighty Asian kingdoms. The debate that raged in Japanese councils wasn't about whether the foreigners were friendly or hostile. Everyone knew they were hostile. The debate was about how to respond without suffering China's fate. The Treaty of Kanagawa, signed in 1854, opened 2 ports to American ships. Similar treaties with other Western powers followed, each more humiliating than the last. The foreign powers demanded extraterritoriality, meaning their citizens were not subject to Japanese law. They set Japan's tariff rates, crippling its ability to protect domestic industries. These unequal treaties were a profound shock to Japanese pride. The nation that had never been conquered, protected by divine winds and samurai swords, had been brought to its knees without a shot being fired. What happened next defied all historical precedent. Faced with overwhelming foreign pressure and internal chaos, most nations in Japan's position had either collapsed into civil war or become Western colonies. Japan chose a third path, one so audacious that even today historians struggle to find adequate parallels. The crisis crystallized around a seemingly simple choice: support the shogun or support the emperor. The shogunate had ruled for centuries, but it had also signed the humiliating treaties. A movement arose calling for Sano joy, revere the emperor, expel the barbarians. Young samurai from domains like Satsuma and Choshu began plotting revolution. But wait until you see what happens next. The Meiji Restoration of 1868 was not just a change of government. It was a conscious decision by an entire nation to transform itself. The young Emperor Meiji, just 15 years old when restored to power, became the symbol of this transformation. But the real work was done by a remarkable group of leaders who understood that the only way to expel the barbarians was to learn from them first. Fukoku kyohei became the national slogan, rich country, strong military. The new government sent missions to Europe and America to study everything from railroad construction to constitutional law. Young Japanese students flooded Western universities. The samurai class was abolished, their stipends commuted to government bonds. The wearing of swords was forbidden. Within a generation, Japan built a modern military based on the Prussian army and the British Navy. They constructed railroads, telegraph lines, and factories. They established a modern educational system, making primary education compulsory. The speed of change was breathtaking. Visitors to Japan in the 1870s reported seeing samurai in traditional dress riding in steam trains, a perfect symbol of a nation caught between past and future. But this transformation came at a terrible cost. The samurai, stripped of their purpose and privileges, rose in revolt. The Satsuma Rebellion of 1877 saw the last stand of the traditional warrior class. Armed with swords and obsolete matchlock guns, they faced a conscript army equipped with modern rifles and artillery. Their destruction was swift and complete. The age of the samurai was over. Japan's modernization was driven by more than just a desire to catch up with the West. It was fueled by a burning determination to revise those unequal treaties, to stand as an equal among nations. But equality in the imperial age meant having an empire of your own. Japan looked at the Western powers and learned that lesson all too well. And here's where everything changes. The First Sino-Japanese War of 1894-95 shocked the world. China, the sleeping giant, was defeated by a nation most Westerners still regarded as quaint and backward. Japan gained Taiwan, the Liaodong Peninsula, and dominant influence in Korea. 10 years later, Japan challenged Russia itself. The Russo-Japanese War of 1904-1905 was the first time in modern history that an Asian power had defeated a European one. The victory sent shockwaves around the world. In colonized nations across Asia and Africa, people took hope that the age of Western invincibility might be ending. But Japan's success contained the seeds of its own destruction. The nation that had modernized to avoid becoming a colony became a colonizer itself. Korea was annexed in 1910. During World War I, Japan seized German possessions in the Pacific and made demands on China that would have reduced it to a Japanese protectorate. The student had learned the lessons of imperialism all too well. The liberal 1920s gave way to the militaristic 1930s. The army, claiming to act in the emperor's name, dragged Japan into a quagmire in China. When America embargoed oil shipments to protest Japanese aggression, Japan's leaders faced a terrible choice: abandon their empire or attack the United States. Pearl Harbor was not madness, as it's often portrayed, but a desperate gamble by men who saw no other option. They knew America's industrial might. Admiral Yamamoto, who planned the attack, had studied at Harvard and understood American power better than most. But they hoped a swift, decisive blow might convince America to accept Japanese dominance in Asia rather than fight a long Pacific War. We know how that gamble ended. By August 1945, Japan lay in ruins. Tokyo, Osaka, and dozens of other cities had been reduced to ash by American firebombing. Hiroshima and Nagasaki had introduced the world to the atomic age. The empire was gone. The nation that had never been conquered was now occupied by foreign troops. And then Japan transformed itself again. Just as rapidly and thoroughly as the Meiji Restoration had turned a feudal state into a modern power, the post-war period saw Japan reinvent itself as a peaceful democracy. The energy that had gone into building battleships now went into building better cars and electronics. By the 1980s, Japan was the world's second-largest economy, achieving through trade what it had failed to achieve through conquest. Today, Japan stands as one of history's most successful nations, with high living standards, remarkable longevity, and cultural influence that spans the globe. From anime to automobiles, from sushi to semiconductors, Japanese innovations have shaped the modern world. What can we learn from Japan's extraordinary journey? Perhaps this: that nations, like individuals, are not prisoners of their past, that with sufficient will and wisdom, even the most traditional society can reinvent itself without losing its soul. But Japan's story also carries warnings. The same energy and determination that enabled miraculous modernization also fueled destructive imperialism. The pursuit of equality among nations led to the pursuit of dominance over others. The black ships that sailed into Edo Bay in 1853 didn't just open Japan. They unleashed forces that would reshape the entire world order. From isolation to empire to democracy, Japan's journey has been unlike any other nation's. I'm curious to know, do you think Japan's rapid transformation was ultimately a success story? Or did the nation lose something essential in its rush to modernize? What parallels do you see between Japan's 19th century challenges and the dilemmas facing nations today? If this story blew your mind, you need to see how China went from the world's most advanced civilization to being carved up by foreign powers, and how it's reclaiming that position today. Click that video now and subscribe so you never miss history with Rambo.